Hey friend, welcome to Healthy by Heather Brown. Do terms like mental health, intermittent fasting, and buzzy wellness words make you feel overwhelmed? If you don't know where to start with loving the life you already have and letting your good things grow until they become daily habits, I got you, mama. So join me as we unpack what it looks like to live a life well loved and redefine a new approach to health from the inside out. Think of this space as your girlfriend's group text with the occasional dad joke and point of view from my Yankee hubby, Eric. We promise to give you key takeaways that you can implement right away to pursue health in your mind, body, and soul, because God made us that way. Don't stress. Let's hop on this Hot Mess Express together. You guys, oh my gosh, we had Matt Beaudreau, who is, all the boy mamas. I know y'all were just eating that episode up, and me and Eric have been talking about parenting. So today, I'm thrilled to welcome Kari Kampakis to the show. If you haven't heard of Kari Kampakis, girl, get ready. If you are a girl mama, you have got to tune in. She is like the queen of being girl mamas, but she's also going to talk about marriage and all kinds of great things with us today. We have actually met several times because we both live in Birmingham, and I have just loved getting to know her. And I truly am inspired by the way she lives out her faith and speaks to the hearts of moms, specifically girl moms, through her books, her writing, and her podcast. She has several books at this point. We're so proud of her and all that she's done, hailing from Birmingham, Alabama. Her books for teen girls, 10 Ultimate Truths Girls Should Know and Liked, Whose Approval Are You Living For, are her best-selling books for moms. Love Her Well and More Than a Mom have been used widely across the country for small group studies. Kari's work has been featured on The Today Show, Today Parents, Focus on the Family, and Boss Camp's blog, The Huffington Post, Thrive Global, and other national outlets. She and her husband, Harry, have 4 daughters and a dog named Lola. So with all that said, Kari, welcome to Healthy by Heather Brown.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Heather.
Of course, girlfriend. So first off, I'd love to hear how your writing journey got started and just how the Lord laid this mission on your heart that has gone so far.
It was never, I guess, a linear path, as I think most creative endeavors never are. But I mean, if you want to know the true origin, my mom, I come from a family of 5 kids, and my youngest sister and I were number 4 and number 5. So we were the little girls. And my mom started working when she went back to school. And so she laughs at our writing career. We were the 2 that loved to write like my mom. We'd come to her office after school and we're sitting on the floor and telling her, we're bored. And she was like, I would throw paper and pens at you 2 and tell you to write something, get creative. So that's like the glamorous origin of how I started writing. It just goes to show parents, like, it's okay if your kids are bored. Like, that's what sometimes makes them creative and makes them explore these hobbies that could one day actually become something. We were just always encouraged when we were younger just to be creative and write poems for our parents and all that. In college, I majored in PR, had a journalism minor. And then out of college, I started working at Alabama Power. And it was a PR job, but somehow, because I'd had a few journalism classes, I somehow became a writer for the company. So long story short, did that. I moved to Huntsville a few years later, got married. We went back to school and I started freelance writing for just to make money to pay my tuition. So I did all that, but it really wasn't until I guess I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter. And this is fast forwarding 10 years where I was doing photography at the time. And I just started having that feeling that I wanted to write again. And my mom had just retired and she was starting to go to some writing seminars and invited me to go with her. And I'll never forget, I just had a baby. No, I actually had the 3 little ones, but I made excuses like, I don't have time to write. I don't have time to sit down and do a book. And I remember going to this one conference and everybody in the room was 70 years old or older. And they had all just retired and they were all writing a book, but they'd waited until their 70s to start writing. And It just hit me. I was like, that's going to be me. Like, I'm going to make excuses until I'm 70 years old. And I knew that it might take 5 or 10 years to get published. And so something I heard at that same conference, they said, even if you only write 15 minutes a day, like you can write a whole book that way. So just give yourself 15 minutes. And a lot of times it'll turn out to be more than that. So that was really where it started. I just decided I was going to write a book, started with 15 minutes a day. And then it ended up sometimes turning into an hour a day or 2 hours a day. And I just did it, in the chunks of time when I could, raising little girls.
I love that so much. And we so often talk about mental, physical, and spiritual health. And so I always say, even if you don't have an hour to work out, just jump on the treadmill and do a mile or a half a mile. Or even if you can't read a whole chapter of the Bible, well, then listen to the 5 minutes in the car, let your Bible app read to you. You can just start small. And I love that that was part of your journey. You're showing that so realistically. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Now, I know your daughters are older than my boys, and I feel like you have so much parenting wisdom to share. So recently I've been in more conversations about parenting styles. And I think sometimes we go into parenthood thinking that it's a one size fits all. And maybe that's even how we were raised as kids. So obviously there are biblical principles that apply, but man, our kids' personalities and orientation towards God and their parents are very wildly unique, as you well know, with 4 girls. What are some things that you have learned about the parent-child relationship and how different children need to be parented differently?
Oh, that's so good. It's true. I mean, I've read somewhere that siblings share 50% of their genes, and yet you'll never meet two siblings that are exactly alike. They're always
And
so
they're
different.
usually opposite.
They're opposite, exactly. And what we all know this, what works for one child does not work for another child. And so for me, it just takes a lot of prayer and just wisdom. And it's very humbling. And, I think we can stay stuck and feeling defeated because we have been humbled. We tried something and it didn't work or whatever. But I think those are really opportunities for us just to admit, like, I need God. I cannot do this on my own. And if I have a good idea or something does work here, it is not me, it is God's grace working through me. I heard this one time, talk about these little 5-minute increments. Sometimes the most life changing things I've heard as a mom is just like a little blip. Somebody might say it, or you're driving down the road. And I heard this on the radio one day. Somebody said, raise the child you have, not the child you want. And that really stuck with me because I had 4 little girls at the time. And especially when it's your same gender, I think I've heard it, especially from mothers, that sometimes we have that tendency to try to perfect our daughters, or we can see them as our second chance. And I'm sure with dads and sons, there's definitely that tendency too. A very extroverted mom wants her quieter child who likes to do art and play by himself. She wants him to have more friends or have more social time, but he's perfectly happy in his little world. He doesn't need all the stimulation that his mom might need. And so I think it's really just learning to identify our child's personality. I've heard it described like, that every child's a mystery box, and we're just constantly unlocking that box and figuring things out, just being a student of our child and just really learning to appreciate their personality and knowing that God designed them exactly like that. So whether you have a very strong-willed child, God designed them for that, and that there's going to be something in their life where you will be thankful that they have that strong personality. Like they need that to get through that trial. Whether that you're a very tender child, a very sensitive child, God designed them that way too. And so I think our job as moms, and really our superpower as moms, is that we're the ones spending the most time with our children. And we have that intuition, if we can really tap into it, of like, okay, so how can I channel this personality in a God honoring direction? And how can I help them become the young woman or the young man that God's created them to be?
I love that so much. And when I wrote this question that I wanted to ask you, I was also thinking about how I've heard, like I was telling y'all earlier, I've heard Kari speak about you and your husband and your strong-willed child. Do you mind sharing that story you typically share?
Yes, yes. It's funny. I've talked that you've heard it's on Mercy, but what everybody wants to talk about afterward is the strong-willed child. The story about the strong-willed child. Like that's what everybody relates to. And I think most families, if you have more than one child, there's going to be a firecracker in there. There's going to be a strong-willed child.
Now,
And
Kari, were you the strong-willed child growing up? You said you had
no,
4 you weren't.
no,
Okay.
I was the fourth. I was the quiet, recluse, like to curl up with a book. And so that's why I was totally thrown off by a strong-willed child. But yeah, I think I made the common mistake that a lot of parents do. I know now that we have to connect with our children before we correct them. And it's going to work a lot better that way. But especially when you're a young mom and your kids are just all over the place, it's just, you don't have time to sit there and think of a strategy. You're just needing compliance. And so my story was my husband was commuting at the time. And so I had these 4 little girls and they were great, but they're children. And so we were together a lot. And I had one that was especially strong-willed. She was the type that if I said left, she'd go right. Mother's Day out, they said even in the baby room, she'd hear the big kids in the hallway. She'd try to crawl out and be out there with them. Like she wanted to go where the action was. Like I call it like just unstoppable, which is such a great trait, but it's hard when you're a parent with a lot of little ones.
Yes.
And so I was constantly correcting her. I was constantly frustrated. And I even told her a few years ago, I was like, I have to apologize to you. I was going through your baby book and I just talked about how hard you were. And I actually just tore a page out of her baby book because I'm like, oh, poor thing. I know. But I think for me, I was just a young mom. I was tired. I was exhausted. I don't have time for an outlier. I just need her to behave. And she wasn't a bad child. She just liked to do her own thing. And she had a lot of extra energy. And so my husband handled it very differently. He wasn't with the kids all day long, so he could be more patient too coming home. So I want to make sure moms know that too, that before we lay all that guilt on ourselves. But, he would come home and, she might act out. And instead of like scolding her in front of her sisters and always correcting her, he would like pull her aside and he'd patiently just sit her on his lap and he'd just like quietly talk to her. And sometimes I would look over at them and I would get frustrated because I'm thinking, she needs tough love. Like, he is being too soft, But what I learned over time as I observed was that one, she listened to her dad. And a lot of times after those little talks, I don't know what he said to her, but, she would behave better. And then two, I would also notice that sometimes she would just go up and hug her father for no reason. She'd just go up and love on him. And she wasn't doing that to me at the time. And so that made me rethink my strategy. And so when I realized, he would tell me she just needs a little extra love and a little extra attention. But I was just like, I need compliance. So what I realized now looking back was I was trying to correct her without connecting to her. And I think that's a common mistake we can make as parents because we just want them to behave. But we have to remember that our kids are humans and they're like every human being that, they're not going to listen to somebody who they think doesn't like them or doesn't love them. And we know we love them as parents, but sometimes that's not coming through. And, sometimes it just takes just being a little bit more patient, taking 5 minutes out of your day. If I could go and redo that period of her life, I know now I would instead of scolding her in front of her sisters, I would pull her aside. I would just sit on my lap and I would affirm her personality first and say, I love your strength and God gave you the strength on purpose and he is going to use it to move mountains one day. But today I need you to listen to me, and I need you to obey, can you do that? And if you can't listen to me, there may be consequences for you. And then I would hug her and just affirm that personality trait of hers again, instead of always just trying to push it down. So that now as a more seasoned mom, that it's just sometimes about channeling that, pivoting them in a different direction, channeling that strength in the right direction, and then they can be unstoppable. But at the time, that wasn't what I was thinking about.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about we often think about correcting instead of connecting. And I really do think that that's so true. I was a strong-willed child, so I felt for my mom. When you told that story, I was like, oh my gosh, my poor mama. And now I have one of them that, I'm getting to raise. So I feel like it was really helpful for me to hear that analogy that you gave. But I also think it'll be interesting for moms to be able to hear a little bit about how did that play out with you and your husband? So I think about marriage and I think about how, your husband is obviously going to come from parents and how they parented and assume that's the right way to do it. And then you from your parents. So how would you say you and Harry have found your groove in parenting? How long have y'all been married? Just tell us a little bit about your relationship.
Yes, we have been married. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary.
Congrats.
So yes, thank you. I can't say we were college sweethearts. We knew each other in college, but we didn't start dating until a year after college. But we were friends for a long time, not like close friends. We didn't know each other that well, but we were friends. But once we started dating, we probably knew within a week that we wanted to get married. And so,
wow.
Yeah, he and my children, they're the biggest blessings in my life. But, marriage isn't easy and you throw kids in there and, we've had our ups and downs like everybody else. But, what I've learned is just the need to remember that we are on the same team. And I think just with children, if something's not going right in your life or you're unhappy about something, I think your mom is the easiest person to blame. But I think in marriage that when something's not going right or you're frustrated, your spouse is the easiest person to blame. Ooh. And then I just think that's sometimes where the enemy can really get in and just create some narratives in our head that make you feel like it's me against him or, the husband against the wife. And so obviously that's not good for any household. And so I think you really do have to, when they say fight for your marriage and, know what each other's strengths are. And the fact is he and I are very different, but both of our personalities, we need both of them in the mix. He's more patient. He's more laid back. He's kind of the calm in our chaos, but I'm like, get it done. Let's have a plan. Let's keep this house. He's like, let's keep this house in order. Let's keep things going. And so I'm kind of more the engine, but we need both of us in that mix. And so just respecting both personalities. And our kids are funny. They kind of know, like when they're asking us for something, they know who to go to for what question. So,
oh, sure.
He's a lot more laid back on just like, okay, they could go water skiing at this age or, just more the physical things that I get scared about. What if they hurt themselves? And then I'm a little bit more flexible on some of the more, maybe the social things that, can they go out? Can they go spend the night with his friend or do something like that? So right. I think it does take both of our perspectives and personalities. And luckily, we were raised largely the same. If you met our two fathers, you would not think they were the same. Like they were very different personalities, but they were both very loving patriarchs. And I think that word gets a bad rap these days, but they were patriarchs in a godly sense. Like they were the kind of men that still my dad's alive. And he would lay down his life for any of us. They would take a bullet for a person they love. Like they will protect their people. It's more like using your life to serve and sacrifice for others. And we both were raised with dads who just loved their families, would do anything for their families, and really just made you feel like they had your back. And so we really both brought that into our family. And we just know that the world is so hard these days and we can't control so much that's out there. But I do firmly believe that we can control the environment and the culture we're creating at home. And if we try to cultivate a godly environment, then that gives our kids a sense of security.
Yes. Now, I know, Kari, that you mentioned before that the world obviously is kind of crazy right now. Like sin and Satan are definitely having their fun right now. And we as believers feel that and we see it. And it just doesn't make sense because of what we know internally from, the Holy Spirit and from biblical wisdom. How do you and your husband speak to your girls about what's going on in the world? How do you think that you guys have come together closer throughout your relationship? I guess if you could give like 25 years of marriage, here's our biggest piece of advice for parenting in crazy times, and then maybe your best marriage advice. I'd love to hear those things, and I'm sure our listeners would too. Hey mama, do you feel like you are surviving on chicken nuggets and goldfish and haven't stepped in a gym since college? Or maybe, on the other hand, you feel like you're checking every health box and are still hitting a brick wall? Well, I'm here to help you redefine what it means to be healthy from the inside out. I'm a former fitness instructor and everyday mom who is passionate about helping you create a beautiful life you freaking love. So I'm opening the doors to the Healthy by Heather Brown membership to the public and can't wait to walk alongside you and be your cheerleader. When you join, you'll be added to my exclusive Facebook group. You'll receive my Sunday reset training that will help you create promising, sustainable, healthy choices from the inside out, which will in turn lead to a more joy-filled life for busy moms. Live coaching and workout classes with yours truly. You asked and I listened. We'll talk about how to balance your whole health when you have kids and life get busy with school and activities. It includes grocery haul ideas and accountability as we all reset together each Sunday. There will be so much offered that you won't find anywhere else on the internet. Are you ready to take one step out of stress, shame, unhealthy boundaries, and fatigue and add healthy rhythms to the Hot Mess Express? When you're ready, I'll see you on the other side of the link in the show notes. I'm excited and ready to hold your hand and meet face to face.
Honestly, I always go back to the faith element. The older I get, the more dependent I realize that I am on God. And I think Harry would say the same thing. We talk about it that, he's like, sometimes if I'm frustrated with you and I'm like, she didn't do this or she did this. He's like, I know that's the devil getting to me, wanting to come between us. And so I just think the awareness, and even I talked to my daughters about this, we got 4 girls. I'm like, I grew up with 4 siblings and there's sibling rivalry. And I was like, and it doesn't end. Like you could be jealous or envious or just so many different things with any relationship, but you just have to know that our God is a God of harmony and peace and order. And whatever he wants, there's an enemy out there who wants to destroy all that. And what I see in my work, I truly believe that we can get through anything in life with God, with our faith, and then with the right people by our side, that God has given us that community. And what I see in our work is that we're facing bigger challenges. We're going through more darkness in this day and age, but people don't have the relationships in place, that they don't always have the strong friendships or they don't have the strong relationships at home. And that's one reason I'm so passionate about helping mothers and daughters. Like if you are having conflict, like don't just live with it. Don't settle for that. Like moms, see what you can do to mend that relationship and just let your daughter, your son know that you're always there for them. Like they need you, even when they're rolling their eyes or you don't know what's going on in their head or in their heart or in their life. And so just really knowing that we've got to fight for that unity and be just protecting each other and being kind to each other. I know Sissy Goff has written a lot about this lately, and I've seen it too, just with girls. I'm sure it's the same thing with boys too. Just she's never seen so much meanness out there. And it just breaks my heart. Sometimes it used to start maybe 5th and 6th grade, some of these issues, but now you're hearing about it in 2nd grade or 1st grade, just kids being deliberately mean. Yes. And to me, it's just what the world looks like when you pull God out of the situation, when he is not there working in our heart, because I'm like, I'm not capable of being kind without the Holy Spirit in my life. We all have those urges, we all have that human nature. It's just, we're going to act on those knee-jerk responses. And so we really need the Holy Spirit working in our lives to just pivot us and help us see that broader perspective.
Amen. Well, obviously, like we just talked about, it is a scary time to raise kids, and we can't even really speak freely on social media about our views anymore. Like it's just become very censored. You have to be careful about how you word things, what you say. So I think a lot of moms, a lot of Christian moms feel silenced and alone, especially if men aren't stepping up to lead their families. And I know that you've addressed that a little bit. So do you have any words of encouragement for moms who do feel alone and like they're the only one with their convictions or with their view on parenting when they're watching all their other kids parent just let them be on TikTok or do whatever any and all times?
Yes. I think the number one thing to remember is that when you do feel alone, and we all feel alone because we spend a lot of time alone as moms, or we're going through challenges that are different than our friends' challenges, like just letting God fill that void in your heart and just knowing that even if nobody else understands you or nobody else is parenting like you, like God knows your heart, and just really going to Him first for those needs that I think sometimes we go to other parents or other people to meet those needs in our life, and they can't. And, they're going through their own trials and they have their own journey. God's working in their life. But really, just knowing that only God can meet those needs in our heart, and just like really finding that fulfillment there and that wisdom and that grace there. And then just going out and say, God, open my eyes, praying about, help me find moms who are like-hearted and like-minded. And what I feel like you really realize as your kids get older, and I do believe it's exactly what we tell our kids. We tell our kids, cast a wide net, like be kind to everybody. You're not going to be best friends with everybody, and that's okay. Your best friends, you want to share your same values, but you can still be kind to people that maybe are making different choices than you. You can still wish them well, but you've got to find your people. And what you realize as your kids get older, and this is why I think it is so beneficial to cast a wide net, because say your children are in ninth grade, you might be acquaintances with a lot of people, and then you have your little best friends, but then your kids get older, everybody's parenting a little bit differently. The kids are starting to go on different tracks, and all of a sudden you feel alone. So what you do is you look around and say, who else is parenting kind of similarly to me? And some of my best friends are the ones I made probably in the later years that we knew each other. We always liked each other, but we were not in the same circles. But as bigger challenges or issues or situations came up, you started realizing like, gosh, we sure do agree on a lot of these same things. And so that really started new friendships there. And it's friendships based on having those same values and perspectives. One of my friends, we have an Auburn connection. Her son and my daughter went to Auburn. And then that's right. I don't know if I can say that, an Alabama fan, but Auburn's awesome. But her son's roommate is his little sister, is my daughter's little sister in the sorority. So there's all these ties. And we were talking about the awesome mom. So I met the mom when I went to a speaking event in her community. And she was telling me, yeah, my son just went to their lake house, and he texted me a picture of their like family rules that was on the wall. And it's basically like, love God, love each other, all of this. But the son texted it to her because he knew that it sounded like something his own mom would say. Aww. And I just think it was such a great example because I'd already told her, I was like, you two, like y'all kind of know each other, but I can tell after spending time with her, like y'all are going to be BFFs, with your sons living together. Yeah. And so it's just such a testament of like, when you do, I just like pray for light to find light, and you try to follow that path. Maybe it's not somebody that's been your friend for 10 years, but God will put somebody new on that path, and open your heart to that. And just so many sweet moments and relationships can come from that if you're open to those new relationships.
Amen. Well, I will say once this podcast episode comes out, the Healthy by Heather Brown membership, and it's where I really want to encourage like-minded women to find each other for mental, physical, and spiritual health and motherhood. It can be isolating in the world we live in now. And so we just want to both encourage you to find like-minded women in your kids' schools, in your church. Like, you have to put yourself out there a little bit to have that community, but it's so important, so vital. Yes. So I'd love to invite anybody listening to this to come join the Healthy by Heather Brown membership. We would love, love, love to have you and link arms. Kari, I know I'll be remiss if I don't mention this because you are a girl mama, but how do you teach your girls about healthy body image? I kind of just love to hear your hot take on, like, I've heard some grown women say, oh, my first bully was my mom, because she'd be like, are you really going to eat that? Or, I just feel like it's so hard, not just for girls, but for women to even have a healthy body image. So how do you try to teach your girls a healthy lifestyle and make it a safe conversation, especially when I know childhood obesity is on the rise? So it's like, right. I've talked to so many girl moms. They're like, I don't know how to handle this scenario. Would love to hear your advice on that.
Yes. What are the statistics? Like 97 or 98% of women and girls struggle with body image. Wow. It is a real thing. And actually, in my newest book, More Than a Mom, I have a whole chapter on it, like making peace with your body. And I am not the expert in this area. And I tell my kids freely, I work in progress in this area and everything else. But I think so much of what we model in front of them, especially having 4 daughters, that is one thing I always try to be cognizant of. And I can remember one time my daughter was probably in 5th grade, and I was trying on a dress, and it was for Easter. and I'm putting it over and I'd gained a few pounds and it would like not fit over my waist. Like, that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Not great. Not great.
And a lot of times, those are the times when you really want to cry. And I'm like, I was so aware, I'm like, my daughter is watching me. So I'm like, because in my head, I'm thinking one day she's going to be a teenager and this is going to be her in the dressing room. And I'm modeling the response that I hope she will have. And so I was like, well, you know what? I think I need a bigger size. I kind of just, let it roll off my shoulders and just kind of joked about it. So I think like just those little moments like that. And it is hard as they get older, especially I've realized when they turn 16, because all of a sudden they can go get McDonald's or they can go get ice cream. Like they have access to all the food. And so, I've always tried to be aware of like not making anything the forbidden fruit. Like it's okay to have cookies or ice cream, but just, doing it in moderation. But it is hard to teach them, just when you eat well, you're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy. I always tell mine too, just looking at that really from a science perspective, like you get one body in life and it has got to last you a long, long time. And so what you put in your body does matter, whether that's alcohol or drugs or food or whatever it is. Like it might not affect you that much when you're 18 or 25, but as you get older, these things snowball and can create real problems. And so I always kind of, started there. And I'm always a big believer too in staying ahead of the conversation, stay ahead of the body image conversation. And, just always, I think just those little things and like not making anything the forbidden fruit that, everything. I think that we live in a world of extremes. We do have obesity. And then we've got the orthorexia where people are so strict with their diet and they're on the clean food movement. But they're, they only eat like 10 things a day and it just gets more and more restrictive. And that's what you see in a lot of communities these days, especially upscale communities. I see it that it's an eating disorder, but it flies under the radar because everybody's thinking, well, she's eating healthy, but they're not getting the nutrition they need. And so I think it's good to talk about, we need healthy fats, we need healthy carbs, we need protein. Like you've got to get this nourishment for your body and just really focusing on like, what makes your body feel good, what's going to fuel it and help you be the best version of yourself.
Amen. Well, I know we're quickly running out of time, which is killing me, but I did want to quote this. You said in the book you published last year, More Than a Mom, how prioritizing wellness helps you and your family thrive. You made the statement that raising healthy kids starts with them seeing a healthy mom, which amen, preach, love that. I shout that from the rooftops all the time. I'm super passionate about it. So can you expound on what that statement means to you and what exactly you teach in your book? I feel like that goes really like in line with what we were just talking about.
I've been parenting for 20 years. I've got one daughter in college, another one about to go. And just realizing that our role as a mom is important, but we're more than just a mom. More than anything, our biggest role is that we're a child of God. And we have legitimate needs as a human being. And if we do it for our children, then we should do it for ourselves. I mean, I was sick one time and I didn't go to the doctor for 3 weeks. And then I go and I have walking pneumonia. And I was so mad at myself because I was thinking, if this was my child, I would have been there within 2 days. But I kept trying to push through it. And it's just such an example of what we do, neglecting ourselves in the name of sacrifice or motherhood. But it doesn't serve our family well because it could snowball into something bigger down the road. And so you do get to be my age and you realize like health is a big thing. Like you're starting to have things break down. Like you've got to pay attention to your body. And so really just helping people understand that, one day this will be your children and that if you model, taking care of yourself and valuing your body and your life spiritually, mentally, emotionally, that you're teaching your children to do the same, to take care of themselves. And that it's a way of parenting them and preparing them for the future. But it's just really easy, I think, for us as moms to put ourselves in the back burner or to feel guilt about it. Again, not going to extremes. We don't want to be like, well, I need to go on vacation every month because that's my self-care. That's not really healthy. But then, if we're neglecting ourselves in the name of motherhood and not in a good place, that's not healthy either. So it's finding that healthy middle ground that helps us be the best version of ourselves so that we can be there for our family.
Exactly. So what you just talked about, the mind, body, spirit connection, I call that my triple threat triangle. So when you can really be in that healthy place mentally, physically, and spiritually, I mean, your whole family runs better. So don't neglect yourself, but also make sure that you're allowing yourself to be there enough for your children as well to really make that impact at the same time. So Kari, my final question for you, and then I'll have you tell everybody where they can find you online, is what are some ways that you consciously reset and recharge in your life right now? This can be anything that makes you feel like you. And then I'd also love to hear maybe even like, how do you reset or recharge your marriage right now?
I think the main thing is I am type A by nature, a go-getter. And when I was younger, I would just fill my calendar to the brim. I mean, there was no margin. There was no room for glitches because I thought I had to be as productive as possible. And I thrived on that. And the older I get, the more I just leave margin for myself. And I say, you know what? I might write fewer books in my lifetime. It might take me longer to do this project. I might be able to work on 2 projects at a time versus 5 projects. I might not be able to take all the speaking events that I'm asked to do. Like, really giving myself that grace and knowing that when I am in a busy season to like really leave kind of dead days around it. Like I know now I'm an introvert that kind of makes myself an extrovert. But like if I have a speaking event, I don't plan anything in that day afterward when I get home because I need that day to be by myself and to recharge. And so just allowing yourself to have those little graces and to have that time by yourself, I found that's very helpful. And so just not really overpacking the schedule. And that way I can be more focused. And then also, like I've got my calendar spread out for the year, just knowing, okay, this is the week my daughter's moving in, this sister's moving into college, like not planning things around those events, like letting that just be what I'm focusing on, just one thing at a time, rather than trying to juggle 5 things on any given day and being frustrated and stressed.
Yes, yes. So I feel that so deeply. That's something I'm still working on at
It's
37
hard.
years old, still working on it. But then how would you say that you hit that reset button with you and your husband? And I know even before we should hit the record button, you said that you almost wish that you would have realized, even in the thick of early motherhood, what it looked like to keep that marriage alive. Do you mind just speaking some wisdom into that for us?
Yes. And the way it applies to my marriage is it used to be, so say when I was working on my first book, I was trying to write this in 6 months. And so every waking moment I was working on the book. So that like spread into like I was at my computer until 9 o'clock every night. So that cut into my time with my family, it cut into my time with my husband. And then now I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I might go do something for an hour or so, but if he's sitting in bed reading, so I'm like, well, I'll go sit in bed and read. It's just sometimes just making that time together or leaving again, just that space to be together. Like, okay, don't plan too much today. Let's go on a walk. Just trying to find those little ways to connect because we have 3 daughters driving now, so it helps. But there was a time when we were like passing each other on the road, like barely seeing each other
Oh,
because
wow, I
you're
bet.
so busy. I remember we just wave like, this is so crazy. It's divide and conquer,
Wow.
And so, but now you get to be where we are. I'm like, I'm so appreciative and grateful for my marriage and I'm revaluing it. I'm putting it on an even higher priority because I'm like, thank you, God, that, I have him as they go off because we're having fun together again and we have more time together. But there was a time when I put, my marriage on the back burner because I was so focused on raising kids. But it's true, your kids grow up. And that's why we've got to have those adult relationships. So if you're not married, to have your friendships, to have your work, those things that bring you joy and purpose. And your kids want to see that. And this is something, if you are married, even one of my daughters, her friends, a lot of their friends, their parents are empty nesters. And she went on a trip with 2 of them. And the daughters were talking about how much they've seen their parents' marriage thrive now that they are empty nesters. They're like, it's so cute. Like they have these inside jokes and they're going on trips and they're having fun together. So it's not taken away from our children. Like they want to see us happy when we're not there. I mean, obviously we'll be more happy when they're home, but having a life that's even bigger than our children, I think it does benefit them and it gives them something to look forward to when they're our age.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Kari, have you heard that song, Next Thing You Know? It's a country song, I think by Jerry. Well, one of the lines is, next thing you know, your kids are grown and gone. You get to know your wife again. It starts out where like the couple gets married and they have the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, next thing you know. So anyway, I'll have to link that song. It is so cute. You and your husband would probably love it. So
Yeah.
Anyway, well, tell us where everybody can find you online, Kari, if they want to connect with you after this episode.
Okay. Well, I'm probably most active on Instagram, just Kari Kampakis, also on Facebook. And then I have the Girl Mom podcast. I post periodically, but sometimes consistently, but mostly topics on raising girls, but sometimes just on parenting or marriage.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kari. I really appreciate you being here. What a joy.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Heather.
You're so welcome. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of Healthy by Heather Brown. Please be sure to hit that follow button in your podcast or app, or if you're on Spotify, wherever you are listening to this, and leave me a review. If you'll hit that 5-star button, it really helps get the word out about the podcast and helps other people learn about the triple threat triangle, learn about mind, body, spirit connection, and really find a way to encourage and connect with other mamas. Like I said, I would love to invite you to join the Healthy by Heather Brown membership. You can find that link down below. And that way we can get you connected with other mamas who love the Lord, but also want to take great care of the body that he's given us and be a good steward. With all that said, have a beautiful day. Love you, girls. If y'all think I'm a little crazy, just wait till my favorite guest joins me in the Marriage Corner. It's my hubby, Eric. Welcome back to the Marriage Corner.
It's good to be back. I feel like it's been a little while.
I know it has been. We took a little break while we were getting ready to relaunch season 3. And so now I've got Eric back in the hot seat. So excited for him to be here. And we are already going to be very much so in the thick of the back to school season. I thought we would share a little bit about our decision to hold Leighton and Finn back in school a little bit due to their August birthdays, because this is a question that I know a lot of mamas really struggle with. You and your husband talk about it a lot, and it just feels overwhelming to make that decision of, do you send your kid on to school a little bit earlier or later, depending on where their birthday falls? Eric, do you feel like that was something that you encountered growing up, or do you think it's become more of a thing with sports and such as time has gone on?
I think it's always been a question. I think it's more so a question even more today. Also having a summer birthday, being a triplet, I never really talked to my parents about the thought process they had, but they did hold all 3 of us back. So we were a little bit older in our grades growing up. And I think it really did benefit us in a lot of ways, not only academically, but a lot of times in sports, you were the oldest person. But I think more so than just academics or sports, it was more of just a development and a maturity. Growing in that was the most beneficial aspect.
Yeah, for sure. I know that for us, we knew once our boys were both August birthdays, we decided that we were going to hold them back in preschool to do. Our preschool has like a 5K program where it's just Monday through Friday, 9 to 1. Finn is actually doing that this year. And so he will be a little bit older. But then we actually decided with Leighton, because of a few different factors, to actually allow him to do TK, which stands for transitional kindergarten, in between kindergarten and first grade. I really struggled with that decision. And I felt like you brought a lot of really good insight to it, especially after talking with your aunt that was in education for a long time. So obviously we know everybody's decision has to be different for their own families, but we thought it could be beneficial for some of you to hear as you're walking through that season, some of the factors that weighed in for us.
I completely echo what you just said. I think we've always said that each family is different, each situation is different, and no matter what decisions any individual or family makes, we understand that you are making those decisions for your family, and those are best for your family. For us, you mentioned Leighton was in kindergarten. He was doing just fine, I think meeting a lot of his benchmarks. Then a little bit past halfway through the year, his teacher, called us and wanted to talk. And there were some other extenuating circumstances going on as well, too. But she basically just said she felt like Leighton had hit a wall. And in kindergarten, they were doing these tasks where she would read out loud a sentence, and then he would have to recognize it and write it out, which just me personally, I felt like that was pretty advanced for a kindergarten class. And Leighton is our sensitive child as well, too. And she was basically saying, he would become emotional, get a little teary eyed and just get frustrated that, I don't think it was as easy for him as he wanted. Having said that, I think you and I are both big believers in pushing boundaries and stretching how much you can learn. And I think that's a good thing. But it was one of those things where we talked a lot about, and you mentioned my aunt who has experience in early childhood development, education, and things of that nature. And my brother was actually kind of talking about me with his son, who is about Leighton's age as well, too. And one thing our aunt said, and it really kind of rang true, is that she basically said that the one gift that we can give our children is more time. And I think in today's world, there's so much pressure to keep pushing forward, to meet these benchmarks, just to go, go, go. And I think sometimes it is important just to take a step back, take a deep breath, realize these are all, for the most part, arbitrary numbers. And if you're 1 year older, 14 months older, 8 months older than, most of your classmates, in the big scheme of things, it's not going to make a huge difference. And I would say my biggest concern was not the academic issues with Leighton or anything like that. It was kind of going back to my own personal experience. It was more of, what are the benefits from his personal growth and maturity? I think everybody wants their kid to be a leader and to be confident in themselves. And I wanted Leighton more time and to be put in an environment where he could develop leadership skills, because, I think some kids are more susceptible to be rule followers, to be followers, and that's completely fine. But I want to give him the opportunity to grow, and just basically mature so that he understands how to handle these emotions, handle failure better. And, I think it's not just education. I think it's also how your family environment as well too. I think that plays a huge role as well too.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually thought it was really interesting. We were talking with Eric's aunt, and then since then, I'm sure, my phone heard me talking and it started serving me these Instagram reels and these ads talking about how actually a lot of times children in prior, years and in studies, they are really not meant to be sitting behind a desk and studying at the way that now our education system structures them, especially young boys. They were finding that a lot of, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old boys were struggling to be able to sit still and actually take in and process information, and how really their learning should be more play-based at that age. So have you done any research recently on that, babe? Or do you have any medical thoughts that have crossed your mind in studies and stuff recently?
So I think kind of similar to you when we were discussing this, and I'm not sure, but basically I was just looking at a news website and it came up with a new study, and I should have saved it right then, but I did just a quick search on basically research on delaying kindergarten and things of that nature. And one of the ones I came across, and I'm sure Heather might be able to link this in the podcast, but this article I came across was delaying kindergarten effects on test scores and childcare costs. And one of the things I really thought was beneficial about this study is that it gives pros and cons to holding children back in kindergarten. It kind of goes through bullet points, but it says entering kindergarten later significantly boosts test scores at entry. It says a 1-year delay in kindergarten entrance increases math and reading scores by 6 points and more than 5 points, respectively. But one of the other things that I really liked about this is that it also talked about delaying kindergarten can also increase childcare costs for family as well, too, because if you think about it, if you're not putting your children into a formal school type environment, that typically, if you can't be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home parent, a lot of times you have to have those childcare costs. So that's delaying childcare costs, one more year down the road. So it goes to show that each family environment is different. Each person's environment setting that they live in is different. So I really liked how they did the pros and cons of that. But basically it did say, I think there are other studies just from a brief research was that holding children back, whether it's kindergarten, I think from the other studies I read, basically 3rd or 4th grade seems to be kind of the last time where there is a significant difference in holding kids back. After 4th grade, it doesn't seem to have as much of an effect. But anyways, I thought that was very interesting. And yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really good food for thought. And I think especially for moms, I felt wrecked when I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't want to hold him back another year. Oh my gosh, he's going to be so much younger. What's that going to mean for sports? Are we going to be missing his friends?
So much older.
Yeah, so much older, excuse me. But then in sports, is it that he's older, right, than most of the kids? I'm trying to think.
Well, I think that's a little bit different because they go
school
off
to
of
school or age.
More
yeah.
age.
Yeah. But anyway, and then I was thinking about leaving friends behind because I feel like for moms, it's so much more emotional. Whereas for you had a really good insight of this is how I grew up as a male and being in that leadership position. And I really loved how someone even told us the biggest gift that you can give to your child, like you said, is more time, but also in this culture, more time to grow and be sheltered under Christian leadership in your home, you pouring into them, not just academically, but when I think about sending a 17-year-old boy off to college, that oh my gosh, that gives me major tailspin, freak out moment.
Yeah, I think just more time to be a kid in general, to explore, to have fun, kind of like you mentioned, little boys having difficult times sitting still a lot and just giving them more time to be a kid, go to the pool, learn outside. We talk about right now during the summer, one of our really good friends, Kristen, bought the boys basically insect
catching kits,
with cage, the magnifying lens, the tweezers, and all
the
these
nets.
things. And I mean, them just going out and catching frogs, catching centipedes, and all these things. I mean,
R.I.P. to the salamander.
Jeez. I would argue that that's a better education in a lot of ways than, sitting in front of a desk and, trying to write back what a teacher says in kindergarten. But
yeah, for sure. So we know you guys are going to make the right decision for you and your family and your kids. We're glad we got to share a little bit of our heart. And Eric, I will say that I'm going to give it to you on this one. Eric and I often have what we call discussions. We've talked about on the podcast. but in Bluey, they called it, was it squabbles or squibbles? Squabbles. So we had a little bit of a squabble over this whole issue. And I'm happy to say that I'm glad that you won that squabble. And I definitely think it was the right choice for Layton.
I mean, it's one of those things where, we've talked about this very briefly. You have your intuition with things. I have my intuition. And we usually come together and we listen to each other and hear each other's sides. And there's many a times where I will defer to you, just like you deferred in this. And, there's no wrong decision. There really isn't. It's just what is best for you and your family. And you go from there.
Absolutely. Well, before we close out here, I did want to read a podcast review that one of you guys sent in. It's from A Spoonful of Mickey. And she gave us a 5-star review, babe. And she said, my favorite podcast to listen to. This podcast has a little bit of everything for everyone. It's perfect even for singles, for moms, for those interested in getting healthy, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for that shout out. I'm like, you get it. The triple threat triangle. For those struggling and for those who want to listen to a good, wholesome podcast while they're driving. I listen to this almost every morning and it's like a breath of fresh air. So first of all, thank you so much. That's very, very kind. And Eric and I are honored that we get to be here with you guys on the podcast. And just a good reminder to please leave us a 5-star review, leave us a comment down below, and we'd love to hear from you guys and read your comment on air as well. With all that said, Eric, anything you want to say in closing?
Can't wait for the next Marriage Corner.
That's right. All right. See you guys next time. Don't forget to hit that follow button. We'll chat with you soon. Love you guys. Have a beautiful day.